Congresswoman, a member of the Trump Assassination Task Force, Laurel, joins me. Before we get to this task force and the recommendation for the Secret Service, I'm wondering whether Vem Miller is representing himself or what lawyer he got to file a defamation claim, because he got arrested with all those items in his car, plus the passports, plus the false identification. Your thoughts on the defamation case? You're a lawyer.
Well, you're right. And as you know, Greta, for someone to bring a successful defamation case, the offending statement that caused the injury from the outset has to be something that was false. So the first thing that any jury will have to look at is whether any of the things that Sheriff Bianco said were actually inaccurate. And if Mr. Miller was, in fact, law-abiding, these things weren't accurate. And then when it gets to the perspective of, from Mr. Miller's vantage point, he asserts he's just a law-abiding citizen who was there to enjoy the Trump rally, and in fact says he is a supporter of President Trump. But even if that is all borne out and is wholly accurate, the question will be, did the sheriff do something that was negligent or reckless? Were the statements that he made based on what he saw and experienced that day and the evidence that he had something that would rise to that threshold? And as you point out, if all of those things were in the vehicle and then he offers his opinion, that is going to be, I would think, a tough case, but the jury will sort it out.
I just think it's a red flag. There's something like he should be happy if this whole thing goes away. This is not something that I'd go hunting for in terms of filing a defamation case. So, I think it's a red flag about him, but we'll wait and see. All right, now to the Secret Service and their culture. Scathing report. What can be done about the Secret Service and their culture?
Well, this report confirms so many of the things that our task force has identified since the first assassination attempt against President Trump. It really highlights and goes into detail things like the communication failures and the systemic failure to coordinate effectively with local law enforcement. And that is an essential part of securing any of these rally sites or a location where one of their protectees is going to be. So there are some very practical suggestions in there, things like having a field manual that they can share with state and local law enforcement. But then it goes all the way to the really broad questions of culture and resources and funding and mission, and really identifies the view of this group that the Secret Service needs to get back to a focus on that protective mission and ensuring that that's where their priority is and that it's getting the job done.
Well, I'll tell you, the word that scares me the most out of the whole report, or what jumps out at me, is the word systemic, because that means if it's systemic, they really ought to think about cleaning the house, because you can't just do a couple patches. Congresswoman Laurel, thank you again for being on the show. Thank you.
Great to see you.